Hello, everybody. My name is NicholassRivas. I talk about politics and stuff, and today we're going to be talking about why people are voting for Jill Stein and why I disagree with it. So, I'm sure there are thousands of reasons you could say you're voting for Jill Stein. I'm not trying to lump everyone in one box, but I've noticed the majority of people, when I asked, and I've seen in the online discourse, have brought up that they are going to vote for Jill Stein because of the genocide in Palestine. That is probably, and if you were to do a survey poll, an opinion poll, I'm pretty sure that would be number one. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm using anecdotal cases, so I could be wrong, but I think Jill Stein provides that, like, well, I don't support Biden's current administration and how he is handling the Palestinian war against Israel. And I look at that with some sympathy. If I wasn't well versed in policy, which even at my stage of being politically online like crazy, I'm not as well versed as many. And still, I can see voting for Jill Stein isn't the best because of this one simple method that I've been trying to use to break down why I'm voting for Kamala. And it's solely because I think that Jill Stein doesn't provide a well thought out plan. And hear me out. This is what I mean. So when Jill Stein says she's going to end all wars, or that's going to be the goal, that's something every president says, right? We need like a substantive plan. If you just say, I'm going to cut all taxes, I'm going to look at you and say, what does that mean, right? Like if you were to cut all income tax today, we would have an economic disaster, right? As much as you hate income tax, this is the system that we currently deal with. Most funding and how our society progresses is because of that. And again, if you disagree with that, great, but you need to come up with a solution. I.e., when Trump says, I'm going to cut income tax but replace it with tariffs, that's somewhat of a substantive plan. I think it doesn't explain a lot, like what kind of tariffs for what. And maybe you don't have to get that detailed because you're not president yet. Fine. The issue with this is I can at least say, I think if you were to do these like 100% tariff increases, it's going to cause a huge cost on the taxpayers than the companies you're trying to ideally make pay this cost, or the suppliers of said tariff, right? So that's my first thought. With Jill Stein and her plans, I have yet to see one. When she says, I want to stop the genocide, I'm going to stop Israel funding by 100, I'm just going to stop them funding, okay? But how? You stop these fundings, we lose one of our oldest allies, a group of people that have been Israel, who have been adamant on helping the United States in its case against people like Hezbollah, who, maybe they haven't attacked us directly, but these terrorists that work against the American interest. Now, how we got to this point, we can definitely be like, hey, America, we overstepped as a society, and we have been plaguing these countries. That's why there's so many terrorists, because we've been kind of just fucking with their shit and they've rebelled. But you leave and now there's a power vacuum. Israel is probably going to pick up funding from elsewhere. So now you have a long-standing ally partner with one of our maybe biggest rivals like China and Russia. And again, you might sit there and say, who gives a shit? I don't care. I'm just trying to focus about the United States. But it would be like closing your eyes to the fact that, like, if Putin gets Ukraine, then the closer to destroying or at least attacking NATO he is getting. And maybe you don't like NATO, but they are a big component of our safety at this point. And it would just be like siding with the Axis powers and saying, like, I don't give a shit. I just want lower taxes. We don't live in that world. We have to live in a detailed, multi-connected world where my say is not just, I want America good. You mean we have our costs, our prices are good and bad because of our current global relations with the world, right? Like, so, like, it's a very childish idea to say, like, no taxes, no war. Like, oh, great. I wish I can live on that planet. I'm glad we're thinking about politics as like a 5-year-old looking into politics for the first time. That's not how this works, right? I don't know what the disaster would be if we were just to cut 100% ties with Israel, but I can guarantee you it would be chaotic. And if you think that is in the best interest of the United States, I just don't think you're thinking straight. I think you have emotional ties to the thought of these people who are taking our money, and you don't care how the outcome. Like, if we were to end funding today, it reminds me a lot. I've been doing research for Haiti, like the history of Haiti, and there was an effort to control Haiti back in the 1900s, and the U.S. was backing different administrations. It failed. When we left, it didn't make Haiti better. Granted, we saved money as a country, but when we left and it in pretty bad shambles, and we never really left either. And it was a very complex issue. And if we were to go back in time, would we do it again? Well, we would probably change a lot of points way before that. We'd probably never, jump into beginning in the first place. It's like in Afghanistan, like, of course we should have left sooner, but what is sooner, right? Like, I look at Obama and think, well, when you killed Osama, was that the sign to say, okay, it's time to leave? With hindsight being 2020, do you say, well, like, we only were able to leave in 2021 because of our efforts in the Obama administration? And I think he didn't leave soon enough. But again, hindsight's 2020. I don't think anybody knew the right time. We definitely knew it was too long to stay there. And so I'm not trying to be an apologetic for our world leaders, but I'm being realistic. If I'm President Obama and I'm trying to stop the terrorists who attacked us post 9/11, ISIS, Taliban, what do I do? Do I just leave? Do I not even try? Oh, finding Osama's going to be too long. It's not going to be worth it. Like, where do we start and stop when it comes to all of this? Like, it's not an easy topic. No one is going to, like, look at you with a defense. Like, if someone tries to look at you and say, like, I have all the answers, they're bullshitting you. They're lying to you. There's no way you as a U.S. citizen think that this is all just going to be fixed with one, fell swoop. It's ludicrous. And I think many of people know that it's ludicrous. Or they just don't give a shit, right? Like, I get it. Like, you don't need to know the geopolitics of the world, but, it's really annoying when I hear these simple, Jill Stein is going to fix this, right? And that leads me to my second point. We need a plan here, right? And that's why I'm voting for Kamala. If Kamala wins, I have a fair breakdown of what is going to occur. Not a realistic one, because things can always change, but it's a fair one, I think, is the best way to pin it. Is Kamala going to fix this overnight? No. This 100-year of battling between countries and religion is not going to be solved by one administration. Doy. Is she going to get us closer to what I believe is the end of this onslaught? Yeah, I think so. And here's why. When I see someone like Jill Stein say, I'm going to cut all funding, that's not realistic. Both in, she's not going to get elected, so she's never even going to touch the presidency. Now, do I wish someone like her was elected? To an extent. I wish we had a Green Party candidate with actual feet, and same with the Libertarian Party. I wish we had this multi-party system. Not to say I want a parliament system, but I don't like the thought of just the two. And I think it's deeper than just having two sucks because both are bad. I think that's too simple. I think there's always going to be, if we had two really good candidates, people would still bitch and complain and say, they both suck. Like, like, that's the point of politics. It's meant to be hard. It's meant to be shitty choices. I mean, that's because like if there was a world where my perfect candidate won, I fucking guarantee you, all you motherfuckers would hate that candidate because we are so varied in what we believe is right, and that's fine. But this is the democracy working. This is the stress test. We got a Donald Trump out of the presidency and an old senile Biden. Now, as funny as that sounds, the complexity kind of ends there. Biden was a good president. Trump was not. And if you want to go pound for pound why one was good versus the other, I will do that. And many people will not. They will say some bullshit slogan. And rarely do I ever see people actually engage in it. So I think as much as we like to bitch about candidates, I don't think the third party candidate right now is viable. Again, not to say I want that. I want more options. I would love at least ranked choice voting in our booths. I would love to see at least the Libertarian Party and the Green Party be on stage with everyone else. I think that would be so cool to see. I'm not opposed to the third party system, but right now they are not providing anything. Um, there's no world where I see them actually succeeding. So I just don't believe in them. And if you think there's a counter to this, tell me. But in this world that I'm living in right now, she's not even physically able to get all the votes. Like physically, she is going to be handicapped by states that don't allow her on the ballot. So like physically, she will not win. Like let's not kid ourselves. She will not win. You might think she's the better candidate. She will not win. Even if everyone tried their best and she, for some reason, even at her like 3% polling, she will not win. So that's my realistic plan. She's never going to hit office. But say, hypothetical, I'll grant that. If she is to get in office, will she do what she's saying to do? Can she stop Congress and all of these omnibus bills that provide funding for Israel? Will she be able to stop that? No. Like, I know we like to think she's going to just veto everything. Awesome. But then what will get passed? What is a Jill Stein presidency going to look at? And that's kind of the crux of my argument here. Do we want a president that's going to veto every single bill? Because people are going to, from Dems to Repubs, they are going to try to pass a bill that has Israel. We've seen at least 3 or 4 since the start of the Biden presidency where there was some funding to Israel, and as if you don't agree with it, fine. But there was funding. It just happened. That's just part of what occurred. Okay, so living on planet Earth, we know funding's gonna come. We know Congress and the Senate, they're going to use leverage and say, okay, you know what? I know Jill Stein doesn't want this, but I know people want, say, an infrastructure bill. I'm going to throw that bill in there. It's going to get negotiated. It's going to get discussed. It's going to get to her desk. And then she's going to say, well, I don't like the Israel part, and she vetoes. Now nothing got done. And I know that that sucks, that we live in this world where Congress has to negotiate or they throw bills in, and it's not just like, here's your Israel fund, even though that does come sometimes. There's going to be some negotiations that happen at the Senate, at Congress with the president, and she's going to not yield. I mean, maybe she will. I will be completely wrong. But hearing her rhetoric, which I think it's fair to go off of that's a person's word. She said, I will not, fund this genocide, right? And she's going to work tirelessly to, this sounds like her biggest policy, right? She's very like foreign policy based person, and I know she's deeper than that. I know she's a very green energy person too, and I know she's discussed women's rights and access to abortion, but she is very focused on this Israel topic, and I don't blame her. It's huge. It's one of the biggest. Again, it's the reason why I'm talking about it is because people seem to just focus on it, and that's where they want to vote for Jill Stein. So fast forward, she's not going to get any bills passed because of her allegiance to this topic. And again, you can blame her, you can get mad at her, you can be pissed. I think that's factual though. Like, I can't sit here and say, like, am I wrong? Like, tell me if I'm crazy for thinking that I'm wrong. So fast forward, I don't think she's going to get bills done. I don't think she's going to even succeed to even get to that point. So what does that mean? It means we live in a world where this candidate isn't viable, both realistically getting to the office and if getting office to make that change. Am I cruel for saying that? Am I being unrealistic? No, I don't think any of that. But people are going to come back and say I'm wrong. And that's what I want to hear. I want to hear people tell me why they think I'm wrong, because maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. I've yet to hear someone convince me and say Jill Stein will succeed in X, Y, and Z. As a younger person, I know in college, I was very adamant on my anger and hatred for the Democratic Party. That hasn't really left. But what has gained from my years of being an adult is I can see, especially during the Biden presidency, his success of handling um, Congress, the Senate. I didn't really realize it. I think because we lived in a time where, or I grew up in a time where when Obama was president, he was in a weird political gridlock. And I think it was fair to say that maybe he did his best. I can't, I wasn't there in real time when it happened, and I haven't looked into it since. Um, so when I see someone like an Obama fail in his presidency, you really realize the importance of someone like a Biden who succeeded. Like in his presidency, again, he's a senile old man, but he got bills through. When you see someone like him, you kind of think, well, damn, like having that political jujitsu to know the policies, to know the rules, like to know how to negotiate. I really underestimated that as like uh, a human. I looked at him as someone who just bends to the will of corporations. And for the most part, he does more than like a Bernie Sanders, but he was effective as a president. And it makes me question, if Bernie was a president, how would he have handled? Would he have gotten the infrastructure bill? Because you think about a lot of concessions that are made to get these bills done. And I think it's just realistic to say maybe Bernie wouldn't have been as viable compared to a Biden. Now, I still would have voted for Bernie, but there's an argument to be made that you could weigh in and say that Biden would have got more stuff done. Is that worth it? Is that something you sit there? Do you look at like an FDR and say like, well, the other guy would have gotten more stuff done, but you know, FDR was able to get the Green New Deal. Would that outweigh? He obviously did more than just that, but does that outweigh everything, right? And I don't know. I wish I can tell you. I don't think it's crazy to think about the realistic candidate anymore. When I was younger, yes. But the realistic candidate, the effective candidate, the one you like the most, I think that's a real conversation to have as an adult. And I think Jill Stein does not fit any of that. I think Bernie was that. And we don't have that right now. So you make do with what you know who's going to be most effective for your policies and your desires. And that leads me to my final point. I think we live in a world where I can make a plan. Like if I talk to a Jill Stein, and I was bringing this up a little bit, but what is your plan if Jill Stein wins, right? And let me elaborate, because I know you're probably looking at that like, what the hell do you mean, Nicholas? If Jill Stein wins, if Jill Stein loses, what's the next step, right? That's something I want to think about. If Biden, in this case, Kamala, if she is to lose, what occurs? Trump most likely will win. He is the second candidate on this ticket. He is most favorable in the polls. Realistically, if you don't vote for Kamala, the next winner would be Trump. That's just most likely the outcome. Yeah, there's probably a 1% chance out there that Jill Stein could win, or the Libertarian candidate. Doubtful, but everything's possible. But if I'm a betting man, I think that Jill Stein will not win. So my other choice, or in America's other choice, if Kamala loses, is the fact that it will be Trump. Trump will then, using his words, his rhetoric, and his past policy, since he was already president, will he bend the knee to Israel? Yes, he said that. He likes Israel. He realizes how favorable it is for the Republicans. They enjoy the support we give to Israel. Now, not every one of them do, and there are more maybe libertarian-based Republicans who don't like Israel as much as the next guy. But for the most part, just like the Democratic Party, many of older, more classic liberals and classic repubs, uh, they do like Israel. And so I think he's going to, placate their desires, and he's going to support Israel. So if your end goal is to support the genocide in Gaza, I think then you're probably best to support Trump or Kamala. More so Trump, right? He seems to have this huge favorability for Israel, and he was successful in giving Israel what they wanted, moving the embassy. His rhetoric alone made people disgusted with the terrorist attacks from Gaza during his moving of the embassy to Jerusalem. He talked about how much he hated the protesters, and now currently in his campaign, he's talking about deporting protesters. So if you are in support of Israel, like you are mega supportive of Israel, that's a huge topic. Trump is your guy. So that's the plan if that's your guy. I am not. And I think that his increase rhetoric will be disastrous for how people perceive the Palestinian people and how to protest the anger against them, against the United States government and Israel government, and against these people, that I think they're being wronged. So my plan is vote Kamala, even though she won't be perfect on it. She seems to be more in line with Israel than myself. Even though I think she is more filtered, I think she is in support of a ceasefire, where I've yet to see Trump say that. Again, I could be wrong on that one because I haven't actually looked up his thoughts on a ceasefire. I just know that he wants to give unvetted support to Israel. Whereas Kamala has said she wanted to stay in the lane and not enact any human rights violations. So that already is a more positive outcome for the Palestinian people. They're still going to be, I mean, like it's not like this is going to end tomorrow. They're still going to be harmed and hurt, and the Palestinian people will continuously lose this battle to Israel. And there will be a resurgence of terroristic actions to rebel against the Israel government. That is just a given. And so it's going to continue. But at least my thought is, with a presidency from a Kamala, you're going to also ideally get a more left-wing candidate who will fight back. When I look at someone like a Tim Walz, from my understanding, he seems to be a lot more left than even myself when it comes to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. So if he is to win, eventually, like say Kamala wins, because right now, if Kamala loses, and we saw it, the outcome of the election in 2028 is going to be a more conservative Democrat. Democrats don't go more left the more that a Trump will win. Like, we've seen it. We've seen this happen. So when Kamala wins, I think most likely you're going to get more of a Tim Walz than a Biden. And I like that idea. I like that we're going to have a left-wing candidate who seems to be more in the lines of a lefty liberal Democrat than a more center corporate Democrat. And again, it won't fix everything, but I think it's going to be a step closer to having progressive policies. And in turn, you're probably going to have someone advocating for a Medicare for all, or for a left-wing mindset when coming to Israel. Maybe we should cut funding by 50 if they attack a Rafah. Will that occur during a Biden administration? I don't think so, but maybe a Tim Walz. So that's my plan. When I hear the thought of what are the next steps, I don't see a world where either candidate from the third party realm is going to provide that next plan. Jill Stein loses, Trump wins. What is the next steps? There is none when it comes to Jill Stein. She does it again in 2028 and loses again in 2028. Maybe she might get more support. Maybe she might become the next Ross Perot. That still doesn't yield you a win. So as much as I like to think that we could elect someone more left-leaning, it just won't work. And also, I just don't think Jill Stein is that left-leaning. She seems to be in more favorability of supporting the genocide in Ukraine, then like she was supporting like the neutrality of well, we shouldn't really like stop Putin from doing his thing, you know, like she seems reserved when it comes to the conflicts of Ukraine, but very adamant on Gaza, Palestine. And I look at that with a little like, well, why? Like, what's your game here, lady? So I think realistically, Jill Stein is just not that candidate that I think everyone is hyping her out to be, and I don't think she has a plan. So yeah, I guess before I start rambling for another 50 minutes, I think this is a good place to end it. If you disagree, please tell me. If you think that I'm looking at this in a too simplified way, please tell me. But I want to hear what people say, because I think and I feel really strongly that my points have been made, and it's hard to refute a very simple question of what are the next steps. But again, you know, tell me if I'm crazy, and we'll leave it from there. Thank you guys so much. New videos every day, and peace.